Okay, we have a new recording, so we need to change names again. Mr. Leffler, I do not know why you show up as Jarek Geraji, but we'll change you again. You certainly look like Mr. Leffler this afternoon. You look exactly the same as you looked this morning.
Yeah, I don't know where that name comes from.
It's not somebody in your office, I take it.
I don't know. I'm in Ellen Matkin's office. So.
Oh, okay, maybe it's somebody in their office. Anyway, that's fine. And we'll update Mr. Durbin's phone number as well. So just give us a moment. I don't know, maybe oh, there we go. Okay, I wasn't sure about Mr. Durbin. Okay, so we're on the record. It is October 27, 2022. It's just after 1 p.m. This is the afternoon of the second day of hearings by the Administrative Hearings Office in the court's reference to the State Water Resources Control Board in City of Marina versus RMC Lonestar. I am Alan Lilly, presiding hearing officer at the State Water Board's Administrative Hearings Office. The appearances appear to all be the same as they were this morning and yesterday, so I'm not going to ask for appearances again. And having no further preliminaries, let's go ahead and get started. So Mr. Brochard, you're up for cross-examination questions of Dr. Ye. And Dr. Ye, just a reminder, you still are under the oath you took yesterday.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lilly. Good afternoon, Dr. Ye.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Were you present this morning? Did you hear Mr. Leffler's testimony?
Yes.
Did you hear Mr. Leffler refer to an upper and a lower 180-foot aquifer?
Yes.
The 2022 North Marina groundwater model does not make a differentiation between an upper and a lower 180-foot aquifer, correct?
It's one model layer in the 2022 groundwater model.
Can we look at CalAm 13, please?
Okay, we will post or screen share exhibit CalAm 13.
Dr. Ye, did you hear Mr. Leffler testify about this document earlier today?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall that I showed you this diagram during your deposition?
Yes.
During your deposition, you'd stated that you did not know whether this figure is represented in your model. Is that correct?
There are so many different features here. I don't know what exactly you're talking about, like model layers, groundwater flow direction, or seawater intrusion.
Okay, and Mr. Brochard, for your future questions, you should be clear as to which model you're talking about. I assume you're talking about the 2022 model, but it'd probably be good to make that clear as well.
Yes, I'm referring to the 2022 North Marina groundwater model. And Dr. Ye, I just want to know if this diagram accurately depicts what's in your model. If you know.
Ambiguous over broad, which portion?
Yeah, Mr. Brochard, I think Dr. Ye just testified that this figure has many different elements And the model has many different elements. So I think to make it clear to all of us, you have to break your question up into parts rather than asking generically about the entire figure.
I guess I could try and ask Dr. Ye, are there any elements of this model, of this figure, I'm sorry, that are not in your model?
I recognize real quick, like the model layer. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the model layer is consistent with the general picture.
Okay. And in this picture, do you see that there are arrows that point from the word perched mounded aquifer in the top right? And they appear to run along what I believe to be the Fort Ord Salinas Valley Aquitard. Do you see that?
Yes,
Okay. And then it appears that the arrows then go down into what's defined as the dune sand aquifer, and then below the 180-foot aquifer. Do you see that?
yes.
Okay. Is that depicted in your model?
This is a very general, like the water level in that perched aquifer, it's flowing westerly and also northerly. But I do have that westerly flow direction. In the model.
Okay. Now, do you recall me asking you that question at your deposition?
I don't.
Okay. Mr. Lilly, I'd like to read from Dr. Ye's deposition, if that's okay.
Hold on, can I ask for a page and line number?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and put it up on the screen. So tell us, and I'm trying to remember, do we have two different files for his deposition transcript?
Yes, and this will be volume 1.
Okay, so let's go ahead, and it just helps me. I have not seen the deposition transcript before. So let's go ahead and post that. Ms. Mullen, if you can please screen share Ye deposition transcript, I guess it's volume 1, and then we'll ask Mr. Brochard to what page he wants us to go to. And just, Mr. Brochard, I know I asked you to limit it to an hour, but I'm going to give you a little leeway if it takes us a little while to get these files up, because
I appreciate that.
this is a little harder than if you were in a real life in-person hearing where you could just present a transcript to somebody. We'll get it as fast as we can. Fortunately, we do have them all uploaded to our FTP folder, so it should go fairly fast here.
Just preliminarily, Mr. Lilly et al., and I get the government code section that governs our evidence, but what's the purpose of, I'm asking him reading this. The question was, does he remember testifying about something in a several hundred-page deposition? And he said no. So is this impeachment? For what purpose is this being offered?
I think it's to refresh his recollection. I think it's admissible under that purpose.
Of whether he remembers a question asked?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what your objection is, but if your objection is for hearsay, he's allowed to, Mr. Brochard is allowed to present this to refresh his recollection.
I think also, just generally speaking, opposing parties are allowed to use the deposition transcripts pretty much however they want most of the time. I'd like to go to page 155.
Yeah, anyway, if there was an objection, it's overruled. I think it is appropriate for Mr. Brochard to ask Dr. Ye questions about his deposition, and hopefully, can you make it, Ms. Mullen, if you can make it one notch bigger? I know you're trying to fit it on one page, but I can't. There we go. Okay, so go ahead, Mr. Brochard. Tell us where you.
Sure. My question starts at line 1, and then there's some colloquy, and it ends on line 3 of the following page.
Okay, so probably the easiest, excuse me, Mr. Brochard, probably the easiest way is if you can just read that slowly and then ask Dr. Ye if he remembers that. I think that'll be the most efficient way to do this. And I'll read along with you silently while you're reading out loud to all of us.
So at line 1, I said, okay, Dr. Ye, I want you to look at this figure, and I want you to assume for a second that it's depicting water running seaward across the Fort Ord and Salinas Valley Aquitard, which then drops off at the edge of the Aquitard into the dune sand aquifer below and the 180-foot aquifer. Are you following me? Are you following the arrows? Answer, okay.
And then just stop, and just so we're clear, this figure is referring to the figure that is also CalAm 13.
Yes, Mr. Lowe, that's the exhibit we were looking at.
Okay, so go ahead.
Do you want me to read Mr. Betts's objection?
I don't, well, let me read it. I think you can skip over his objection, and if he thinks he needs to say something again, he can, but let's go ahead down to line 18.
Line 18. So assuming that when you prepared, you built the 2022 North Marina groundwater model, you calibrated it, does it depict what I've described this figure to represent?
And then you can go over, skip over Mr. Betts's objection. We'll go to the next page.
And the answer is on the next page. Dr. Ye stated, yeah, I cannot answer this question, but all my model information are available in the model files.
Okay, so I don't know, Mr. Betts, if you have an objection today. It seems like this is a reasonable question for Mr. Burchard to ask him if he remembers testifying to that during his deposition.
I remember.
Okay.
Okay.
So when I asked you at your deposition, you said you couldn't answer the question, but you appear to at least partially answer it now. I'd like to know what changed between the deposition and today.
It's really like when I first saw that diagram, I don't have like exactly orientation you talking about that arrow. But today I answer to you is really the groundwater flow direction in my groundwater model. So that's why I mentioned, you know, we got some westerly direction, but also northerly direction. Depending on that cross section, the location of that exactly cross section. Actually, some of the water flow easterly. There's groundwater divide in that FOSVA area.
So
And I'd like to point out that if we're going to look at the question and answer, it goes on and he does answer it later on the next page. So I think that's a misrepresentation of the full colloquy.
Okay, well, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, he's explained today, and I think I've provided a legitimate explanation for why he's providing more detail today than he may have during the deposition. So I'm not sure we need to get to your point, Mr. Betts. I think Dr. Ye has made a plausible and understandable explanation. Go ahead, Mr. Burchard.
thank you. Dr. Ye, you may recall this morning, were you listening to Mr. Durbin's testimony?
Yes.
Okay, you may recall that Mr. Wilkins asked Mr. Durbin how the differing boundary conditions between Mr. Durbin's model and the 2022 North Marina groundwater model were accommodated during the transfer between the models. And Mr. Durbin said that we would have to ask you that question. So I ask you that question. How did you accommodate the different boundary conditions when transferring boundary conditions from Mr. Durbin's model to the 2022 North Marina groundwater model?
Okay. So in general, the active model cells for the North Marina groundwater model are within the Mr. Durbin's regional model, except for the area far away offshore. the regional model, the boundaries are smaller than North Marina groundwater model. So we made all this area to be inactive. That's very far away from the offshore, and there's no impact on the North Marina groundwater model.
Were the boundaries of the North Marina groundwater model larger or smaller than Mr. Durbin's model?
The 2016 model is slightly larger. I'm talking about the boundary condition within the North Marina groundwater model, but we made a very small area become inactive. So the model domain for the North Marina groundwater model still the same, just like for the very far offshore area, some model cells become inactive.
Some model cells in the, well, strike that. You just referenced it in your response a 2016 model. Which model is that a reference to?
That's the hydrofocus model. Also, we refer to North Marina groundwater model 2016. Okay,
so I don't think that really answers my question as to whether Mr. Durbin's model has boundaries larger or smaller than the 2022 model. Perhaps let me try it a different way. Mr. Durbin did work that you used for the boundary conditions of the 2022 North Marina model. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And the boundary of Mr. Durbin's model are larger or smaller than the 2022 North Marina groundwater model?
Much larger.
Much larger.
I don't think you're trying to be confusing here, Mr. Burchard. This is complicated, but when you say larger or smaller, Dr. Ye, are you referring to the size of the model cells at the boundary or something else?
My understanding for this question is the model domain. I think Mr. Durbin's regional model cover the Salinas Valley and seaside basin.
Okay.
And the North Marina model only cover probably about like 14 miles square. The coastline probably in the middle, so it's like 7 miles inland and 7 miles offshore.
Okay, so and that's pretty clear. The North Marina groundwater model has a much smaller model domain than this Mr. Durbin Salinas Valley and Seaside groundwater basin model. I understand that. Okay, so with that, I'm sorry if I've muddled this, Mr. Burchard. I'm trying to understand this, so please go ahead.
So Dr. Ye, when we're talking about the location of the boundaries for the two different models, was there any area in which the 2022 North Marina groundwater model where a boundary extended beyond the boundary of Mr. Durbin's model?
So only the area I mentioned earlier, very far away from offshore, that area.
So your 2022 model goes farther offshore than Mr. Durbin's model?
Yes.
Okay. And the rest of the boundaries are within Mr. Durbin's model?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Burchard and Mr. Ye. That was not clear to me before, but now it is clear. Thank you.
And I'll ask Mr. Lilly's question now, were the cell sizes at the boundary locations different?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, are the sizes of the cells different in the two models?
Yes.
How did you accommodate for the size, for the difference in the sizes when you were transferring the boundary conditions from Mr. Durbin's model to your model?
Mr. Durbin's model is a finite element model. So like consists of several triangle element. So each triangle, you have three node to represent that triangle. I'm talking about aerially, his horizontal. Then for the North Marina groundwater model, it's a finite differences model. Each model cell is like 200 feet by 200 feet in the size. So when we took the regional model information into the North Marina groundwater model, so first of all, let's talk about the initial water level and the boundary condition, general head boundary. So for this information, we provide our model cell and the bottom elevation for each of our model layer to Mr. Durbin. Then he provide us the initial water levels for each of our model cell, and also the water level at those general head boundary for each of the model cell and each stress period for the model simulation. That's the initial water level and boundary condition. We also use the recharge term and discharge terms from his model, including the deep percolation from precipitation and applied water. That's a recharge term. Also the streambed percolation, that's another recharge term. For the discharge term, include groundwater pumping and evapotranspiration from riparian consumptive use. He provide us those value for each of his model node. Then we just incorporate that information into our North Marina groundwater model.
Okay. If we could look at CalAm 57, please. I think it's Mr. It was Dr. Ye's slides.
Oh, okay. We will post exhibit CalAm 57
Look at slide 4.
and go to slide 4.
Dr. Ye, you testified earlier, and this shows that you began your modeling work related to the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project in 2008. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And then you updated the model in 2015 with geoscience, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then in 2016, the model was transferred to hydro focus and they made further refinements. Is that right?
Correct.
In order for Hydro Focus to do that work, you provide all your model files to Hydro Focus?
Yes.
You were in contact with Hydro Focus during their update, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The emails that you exchanged with Hydro Focus during that period of time, they've not been produced in this litigation, correct?
Correct.
And Dr. Ye, do you have an understanding of why Hydro Focus converted the model to a superposition model?
So first of all, I think they still have the transient model. They made a refinement on that transient model. Then they use the superposition model to do the predict the model scenarios.
You recall I asked you those same questions during your deposition?
Yes.
Not the answer you gave me at your deposition, is it?
If you need to, Dr. Ye, we will get the transcript of the deposition so you can look at that.
I can ask an easier question. During your deposition, you told me that you did not have an understanding of why Hydro Focus converted it to a superposition model, correct?
Right. This is because yesterday the question came up. So about the superposition model. So I had a chance to look at the North Marina groundwater model 2016 prepared by Hydro Focus. That's the I think it's Appendix E in the EIR.
Okay, so that was my next question. That was the answer you just gave comes from your understanding of Hydro Focus's report.
Yes.
And then not on this chronology here, but after Hydro Focus in 2020, Weiss and Associates prepared a report and did some modifications to the model for the California Coastal Commission. Is that correct?
Correct.
Was Weiss and Associates, was their objective to improve upon the modeling that had been done up to that time?
I may call for speculation.
Well,
What it was.
Just ask him if he knows. That's fine. Do you know? You can start with. Go ahead, Mr. Burchard. Restate the question, but I think you want to start with, do you know?
Dr. Ye, do you know what the objective of Weiss and Associates was?
Yes.
And what was that?
To do some sensitivity run on the hydraulic conductivities and also on the hydraulic gradient used by Hydro Focus.
We look at CalAm 48.
We will get up exhibit CalAm 48. Just give us one moment.
Dr. Ye, did you have any communications with anybody at Weiss and Associates while they were doing their work?
No.
Does your understanding as to their objective come from mainly from this report?
Yes,
We go to page 8, PDF 8. And the second paragraph says the objective of the work is to address the recommendations to the extent possible and improve upon the current modeling approach to better predict the percentage of ocean water percentage, or OWP, that will potentially be captured by the well field, and the percentage of fresh to brackish inland aquifer water, freshwater percentage, or FWP, that will potentially be captured, and over what potential area the freshwater capture will occur. Is that your understanding of the objective of Weiss and Associates work?
yes,
And then after Weiss and Associates did their work in 2020, that brings us up to now, and you have now updated the hydro-focus model to make it the 2022 North Marina groundwater model. Is that right?
yes.
And can we look at CalAm 89?
Okay, we'll get up CalAm 89.
Dr. Ye,
And-
is the technical memorandum that you prepared for the 2022 North Marina groundwater model?
Yes, this is a TM. I drafted most of the section and then reviewed by the HWG.
And what is the objective of the 2022 model? And if I say that the 2022 model, will you understand that I'm talking about the 2022 North Marina groundwater model? It's the subject of the technical memorandum here.
The objective for this model is to look at the project impact on groundwater level, to quantify the amount of ocean water percentage, and also to evaluate the project impact on North Marina NCWD wells.
Wasn't one of the purposes also to provide information for Mr. Loeffler's testimony?
Yes,
You were responsible for calibrating the 2022 model, is that correct?
yes,
In calibrating the model, you use in part the USGS guidelines for evaluating groundwater flow models.
I use that also a couple of the ASTM standard guides.
Can we look at deposition exhibit 38?
Okay, we will get up deposition exhibit 38. And since you're going to ask him questions about this, I would like to mark this as an exhibit. So hang on just one moment. I just want to see where we are on Marina Coast Water District exhibit numbers. Unless somebody else can get there sooner than I can. I'm going.
Mr. Lilly, yesterday we marked MCWD 103, and MCWD has also uploaded MCWD 104 today. So this would be MCWD 105.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we did move, we put MCD 104 into the folder. So we will mark, let me get this right. I'm sorry, what was this deposition exhibit number?
30.
30.
It was deposition exhibit number 38.
Okay, so MCWD exhibit 105 will be Depo exhibit 38. I'm sorry for the interruption, but I do want to try to maintain a good record here. So go ahead, Mr. Burchard.
And Dr. Ye, this is the USGS guidelines that we just mentioned. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you produced these guidelines during your deposition?
Can you repeat your question?
I mean, Mr. Burchard, I know you're trying to do leading questions, but it's probably easier if you just say, did he produce that? I think that'll make the dialogue a little clearer here.
Did you produce these guidelines to Marina Coast in this litigation?
Yes.
Okay. Can we look at page 9?
Okay, we'll go to PDF page 9.
Scroll down a little.
And tell us what part, and then we'll expand it so one notch so I can read it.
We're going to look at the part where it says a calibrated model.
Okay, so there we go. If you can just make that one notch bigger. Okay, good. Well, thank you.
And
All right, go ahead with your question.
Just going to read where this says, model calibration in its most limited meaning is the modification of.
Wait, Mr. Burchard. Okay, I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure we all knew where you were, but you're on line 2 of that paragraph. So go ahead and read a little more slowly. Even though we don't have a court reporter, it's still good to read a little more slowly.
I'll start from the top of that paragraph and just read the first 2 sentences.
Okay.
A model that is calibrated is required to address many hydrologic problems. Model calibration in its most limited meaning is the modification of model input data for purposes of making the model more closely match observed heads and flows. Dr. Ye, do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And no versions of the North Marina groundwater model have been calibrated to flows in addition to heads, correct?
I remember I answered this question at my deposition. There's no flow data applicable for the North Marina groundwater model calibration.
Okay, so the answer was no, you haven't calibrated it to flows, correct?
It's not applicable.
During your simulations of the 2022 North Marina groundwater model, you did not look at the ocean water percentages simulated from the pumping wells during the test period for which we have data from, correct?
Correct.
One of the purposes of the 2022 North Marina groundwater model is to predict ocean water percentage that will be extracted from the test slant wells, correct?
Correct.
And you did not check the ability of that model to predict or simulate the results that were actually seen from those tests, correct?
The 2020 correct, but the 2022 model is not a new model. If you look at the model development from 2008 to current, we have a lot of information already. Actually, the 2015 model was calibrated to the TDS, the seawater intrusion from migration. So this model already built upon that calibrate model.
But you didn't check how this model's ability to simulate the ocean water percentages seen during the test wells, correct?
Correct.
The calibration for the 2022 model focused solely on just matching heads, correct?
Correct.
And the method of calibration you used was the historical matching,
Correct.
and that's in doing that, you used a trial and error technique, is that right?
Yes.
And that involves the manual adjustments, or it involved in this case, the manual adjustment of horizontal and vertical conductivities, as well as storativity. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could we go back to CalAm 89 at page 24?
Slow down just a minute. I'm writing this down, Mr. Rochard. This is important. Okay, go ahead. What exhibit are we now on?
89,
Okay, go ahead.
and we're on PDF 24. Figured it was important. Should probably put the exhibit up.
Yes, yeah, please do. So we're on, and I'm sorry if I'm doing two things at once here. We have on the screen exhibit CalAm 89, and we're at PDF page 24.
And
Go
Dr.
ahead.
Ye, this is where you explain kind of what we just talked about, right? And I'm looking specifically at the top paragraph on our screen where it starts with parameter values adjusted during the calibration include horizontal and vertical hydraulic conductivity, storativity, specific storage, and specific yield. Those were the adjustments that you made, correct?
Yes.
No modifications to storativity, specific storage, or specific yield were retained during the calibration process, right?
Yeah, that means during the model calibration, we modify that, but the final model calibration run, we retain the original values for that.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Now, when you were making the adjustments to the parameters listed here, did you do that personally, or did someone else do that?
It's like my staff modify that under my direction.
And specifically, I believe you said at your deposition that it was a Miss C, SI, that helped you with that process. Is that correct?
Correct.
Were there other members of your staff that helped you?
She's the primary one.
And you communicated with Miss C during this process by email, correct?
Emails, Teams meeting.
None of those emails were produced in response to the deposition notice in this litigation, correct?
Correct.
Could we go to PDF page 22?
Okay, we have PDF page 22 now.
Scroll
Of
down
exhibit CalAm 89.
just a little more. That's good. Dr. Ye, this section is discussing the calibration criteria that was used during the calibration process. Is that correct?
Yeah, those are quantitative parameters used.
And when you say those, you're referring to the residual statistics that are on the screen that we're seeing?
Yeah.
And that is the mean residual, standard deviation, relative error, and R squared. Is that right?
Correct.
And during the calibration process, you had kind of a target for the relative error of less than 15% for the entire model. Is that right?
That's just one of the target you ask me at the deposition. I mentioned 10% to 15% for the entire model domain.
Yeah, that's one of the criteria you're looking at, and is relative error, and you want it to be between, well, you said at your deposition and just now, you want it to be between 10 and 15% of the entire model, but you mean less than.
Yeah, that's very general. You know, if you look at the USGS guideline, you just showed that earlier. Didn't talk about that. You know, the 10% or 15%, and also the ASTM guideline I provide to you. They only provided the equation for this parameter, and mention that's the parameter to use for model calibration. So that 10%, 15% is from the groundwater vistas. If you look at different version, you know, one version talking about 10%, the other 15%. So it's a general guideline, but for our model calibration, we really want to minimize the residuals, like mean residual, standard deviation, relative error, and improve R square. And not only that, we also look at the different time period. We want to improve those in the recent time period. That's why in our model report, we provided this information for the entire model calibration 40 years. We also look at most recent 20 years, then most recent 5 years, when we have much better much better data. That's one thing. Look at the time period. We also look at the area, like you know, something close to the project area. So you can see we also provide those information for the 8 CAM monitoring wells.
I believe you say in your testimony that the relative error was 5% for the entire model domain. Is that correct?
Can I
Sure.
take a look at my report?
Of course. The testimony is Exhibit 88.
Yes.
And again, that's within the 10 to 15% that you're generally looking for, correct?
Yeah, let's go ahead and put that up there, Ms. Mullen. So please display exhibit CalAm 88.
And we're looking at paragraph 11, which is on page 3.
Right. Okay, thank you. Okay, so Dr. Ye, if you can, you might want to just read quietly paragraph 11, read it to yourself, and then if you have any follow-up response to Mr. Brochard, that you can give it now.
Yeah. Okay, so you can see here, yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Brochard.
Yeah, so Dr. Ye, you're saying here that the relative error, you say it's a low relative error of 5% for the entire calibration period, and then even smaller for different smaller periods of time. And my question is, that is judging the relative error for the entire model domain, is that correct?
Correct.
You didn't compare relative error in each layer, correct?
Not for relative error. We have a standard deviation of the residuals for and the mean residuals for each of the model layer.
Thank you. You'd mentioned in exhibit 89, it mentioned R squared also. You didn't look at the R squared in each of the layers either, correct?
Correct.
Okay, R squared is used to judge goodness of fit. I think that's what it said in the exhibit. Is that right?
Correct.
Would you agree that some modelers may also want to look at the relative error in each layer of the model?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And when Hydro Focus did their model, they looked at the relative error by layer. Is that correct?
I don't recall I have seen that relative error by layers.
Can we look at CalAm 39? We're going to go to
Okay, let's go ahead and post CalAm 39.
PDF page 36.
PDF page 36.
Scroll down a little. A little more, please. All right. The paragraph where it says figure starts figure 4.3b provides. Do you see that, Dr. Ye? You just read that paragraph to yourself.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay,
It says in here, I'm going to read from kind of the middle of the paragraph. The RE, you understand that to mean residual error?
I think that is relative error.
Is there a difference?
Yeah, if the residual error, the first of all, I have not heard that, but if talking about residual, I
I
understand.
I
That is,
misspoke. Yeah.
Hold on, let him finish, please.
I understanding that it's a feet. So it's not going to be 30%.
I misspoke. I apologize for that. The RE means relative error. That's what we've been talking about, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so here it says the RE is 14% or less in model layers 4, 6, and 8, indicating that the calibration criteria is met in these layers. You did not do a similar analysis in the 2022 North Marina groundwater model, correct?
No.
And then I think it goes on and it says there's a large residuals are calculated to model layer 2 wells. And as a result, the RE is 30%. So that would mean that they did not meet their calibration criteria in layer 2. Is that what their sentence says?
I saw the 30%, but I don't know what their standard to meet the calibration or not.
It wouldn't meet your general standard for calibration for relative error. Is that correct?
It's really depending on the data. We will look at where the error occurred. Like here, they mention some like purged groundwater. So that relative error is like it's very general. It's a standard deviation of residual divided by the observed range. So that range is very small. Then even the standard deviation of the residual is small, but you will get a higher percentage. So this is not just like one value to look at.
It's one of a collection of values to be considered in determining whether your model is calibrated for the objectives you're looking to meet. Is that correct?
One of the number we look at.
Can we go back to CalAm 89?
Okay. We'll screen share exhibit CalAm 89.
And can we go to PDF page 61?
Okay, why don't you scroll down just a little bit more so I can see what figure, okay, figure 22, PDF page 69. Okay.
Dr. Ye, figure 22 is kind of broken into four quadrants, it looks like, and this is depicting the residuals, water level residuals for the water years 2000 to 2019, correct?
Correct.
The top left, you have layers 2 and 4 combined into one graph. Can you tell me why that is?
Both are the layers representing the dune sand aquifer.
And because they represent the dune sand aquifer, you decided to include them into one graph?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other reasons?
No.
Okay. In what layers of the model are the project slant wells screened?
Dunes and aquifer and 180-foot aquifer.
In the model, are the slant wells screened in both layers 2 and 4?
I think only screen in layer 4 and 5.
These charts, they have the mean residual, the min residual, max residual, and the standard deviation listed. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'm looking at layers 2 and 4. The standard deviation is 9 feet, correct?
Correct.
And that means for any given measurement, the simulated and observed heads could be off by 9 feet. Is that correct?
No.
Can we pull up Dr. Ye's volume 2 of his deposition?
Okay.
It's going to be PDF page 35.
Okay. We've got it. We'll make it a little bigger here. 1 notch bigger, please. Okay, good.
I'm going to look at starting at line 21 is the question, and the answer is on the next page at line 1.
Okay, so why don't you read it slowly to us, Mr. Brochard, the question, and then go to the next page and the answer, and then you can ask a question to Mr. or Dr. Ye.
So Dr. Ye, line 21, question, your graph indicates a standard deviation of 9 feet in layers 2 and 4. Does that mean the model simulations may be off by 9 feet in layers 2 and 4?
Okay, we'll go to the next page for the answer.
Answer is yes.
Okay, so now you can ask Dr. Ye your question.
Are you changing your testimony here today, Dr. Ye?
No, I thought I also mentioned that is only for that model calibration period, that time period, and for entire model layer. But right now you're asking me like the the air in the model for that layer is different for the location because the residual distribution as shown in the report, they are different. So I don't think you can apply that to like anywhere of the model.
So was my question different today, or did you just understand it different?
Objection, misleading. If you want to go to the deposition, I could tell you where he says it in his deposition 2 pages later.
Okay, let me just go back. Well, I think he's tried to explain, Mr. Brochard, I think Dr. Ye has tried to explain the difference here. And Mr. Betts says he in fact explains it 2 pages later. So what's the best way to, I mean, I'd like to get to the bottom line here. What's the best way? I think there might be a more efficient way here.
More just a question to try and make myself better so that we don't keep doing this back and forth. If you heard a different question, I'll try and ask the questions better.
Well, I heard that one was, and maybe I'm hearing it wrong, but I heard one was sort of the model in general, where now the question today is about a specific location. Dr. Ye, is that the distinction we're talking about here?
Right, yeah, I think Mr. Betts mentioned couple pages later, I talk about that.
Okay, so I think, Mr. Brochard, if you want him to explain this, you can go down the deposition, you can ask him to explain it more, or you can move on. It's your choice.
I'll just move on.
Okay.
And I, just for the record, I said 2 pages later. It goes on for several pages where he explains this, including through, I think, 229 and 230.
I'm sure Mr. Betts can do that during redirect. Could we go back to CalAm 89, please?
Okay, we'll go back to CalAm 89.
We can stay right here on the screen.
We're on PDF page 61.
And Dr. Ye, there's no R squared or relative error calculations by level of the, by layer of the model, correct?
Correct.
Did you look specifically at the simulated and observed drawdown during the test slant well period?
Well, you're asking about drawdown. I think the model use the observe the water level. So certainly you can calculate the drawdown from that elevation. But like for my model calibration, we look at the elevation prior to the start of the stem well pumping test, and during and after. So we use all that information for my model calibration.
But did you look specifically at the period during the test slant well period?
Yes.
Is that discussion in this report anywhere?
No particular discussion, but we do have the hydrograph showing the model simulate water level and observe the water level for NW1S, NW3S, and NW4S near the test stand well.
Thank you. Can we now go to page 48? I'm going to look at figure 9.
Okay, so we're on exhibit CalAm 89, PDF page 48,
And
which is figure 9.
And I'd like to zoom in a little on layer 2.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
And then I'm just going to state, because it may help me, that the heading at the bottom of the title at the bottom right-hand corner of this figure says horizontal hydraulic conductivity.
Dr. Ye, does this figure show the horizontal hydraulic conductivities in each layer of the model?
Correct.
And layer 2 is representative of which aquifer system?
If you see that some outline for the FOSVA, so in that SVA, also west of that FOSVA, pretty much dune sand and A aquifer. Then west of that, model layer 2 is A aquifer.
So model layer 2 is the dune sand aquifer.
Yes,
And during the calibration process, these numbers, these conductivity numbers are adjusted within a range. And then that's kind of how you get your final result. Is that correct?
correct.
All right. And the numbers represent the conductivity over a specific area in feet per day. Is that right?
Correct.
It's the amount the water will move horizontally.
Correct.
Well, under a certain
Yeah.
gradient, I think you have to have in there.
It's the amount the water can move. Is that a better way to say it? So for the ranges used during the calibration process, you do not personally calculate what the range of the conductivities that are used in the calibration process will be, correct?
In general, we have some idea provided by our principal geohydrologist, Brian Villalobos. Then during the model calibration, we vary that number to minimize the residuals.
Okay, but you did not personally calculate the range, correct?
No,
Because you said you're not an expert in determining what that ranges would be. Is that right?
I am not an expert, but certainly based on my 30 years modeling experience, I have a very good idea about the range of the K, and also I know some very, several documents provide that information people use.
And I think you just said that the range that you used in this calibration process was provided to you by Brian Villalobos. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. Yes.
And you said at your deposition that the ranges that Mr. Villalobos provided for the layers are in technical memorandum number 1. Is that right?
Correct.
Focusing just on this layer 2 figure in front of us, you see at the bottom where there's a KH, that's, there's a horizontal conductivity value of 2. Do you see that?
Correct.
And that value is not supported by technical memorandum number 1, correct?
Yeah, that, excuse me. I think that number is it's from other document.
It's not from TM1 though, correct?
Correct. TM1 only provide the range of K for dune sand.
We are looking at the dune sand aquifer, correct?
Yeah, I think that is the not dune sand. Like I mentioned, that too is the A aquifer.
Was the A aquifer depicted in your previous models?
Which one? 2015 model
Was it depicted in the 2015 model?
or 2015 or 2016?
The 2016 is Hydrofocus's model, correct?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so was it depicted in your 2015 model, the A aquifer?
No, that one of the criticism for the 2015 model. So in 2016, Hydrofocus made a refinement on that FOSVA because the 2015 model, the conceptual model, in general, ignore that purged aquifer, including dune sand and the A aquifer. And the 2016 model made an improvement on that, also add 6 wells to be used for the model calibration. 2015 ignored that and didn't use any water level for that purged system. But in the 2016 Hydrofocus model use a very low K value, like 2 feet per day for that entire area. You saw several,
We're gonna
25 feet per day there. They use 2 feet per day.
Doctor, we're gonna look at it in a second. Try and just stick with my questions for now.
Please let him answer the questions.
No, I think it's time to move on to the next question, but maybe I'll just stop here. Mr. Burchard, we have been going for an hour and 15 minutes here. What is your, what subjects do you still want to cover in your cross-examination?
I just want to finish this one like real quick, and then there's one other issue I want to address with them.
Okay, so why don't you try to finish this one and then tell me what the other issue is, and we'll go from there.
So Dr. Ye, is there a reason that the A aquifer wasn't included in your 2015 model?
Yeah, that time, we thought that purged aquifer, the water level, very higher compared to the regional aquifer system like dune sand and the 180. So that system was ignored for that 2015 model.
Okay. Now, can we look at CalAm 39 again?
So is this your final line of questions, Mr. Burchard?
Yeah, we're just going to look at the Hydrofocus model that he just mentioned, and then one comment from the Weiss report in relation to this discussion about that 2 value.
Okay, go ahead with, do we now have column 39, and we still have, what page do you want? We have PDF page 36 right now.
Yeah, we're going to look at first page 72.
Okay.
Well, I guess 75. 75 is the easier one. We'll just do it quick.
Okay. And just scroll down so I can, Ms. Mullen, so I can get the figure number here. After you get to page 75. Thank you.
So Dr. Ye, which
wait, just Ms. Mullen, you just scroll down. So I want to get the figure number so I know what, because I don't have all these PDF. All right, this is figure 3.4B. All right, go ahead, Mr. Burchard.
This is the wrong figure. We want to go up one.
Whoops. Okay, we'll go to PDF page 74, which will be figure 3.4a. Is that what you want?
Yes, this is it.
Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Ye, this is the hydraulic conductivities from the hydrofocus model, correct?
Yes,
Okay, which layer am I looking at that would match with your layer 2?
layer 2.
Layer 2. So there's an orange, that's a 4, and is that the area that you have now listed as a 2?
Not entirely, some of that, yeah.
Some of that. Okay. Can we go up very quickly to PDF page 72?
Okay, that'll be 2 pages up. And this is figure 3.3c.
One more page up, sorry.
Okay, figure 3.3b.
One more page up.
All right, we're
Looking for
This is-
KH. There we go.
okay, so figure, I don't know what PDF page we're on anymore, but it's figure 3.3a.
Dr. Ye, the areas we're talking about that hydrofocus has listed with a hydraulic conductivity value of 2 and 4, those are listed here as zones KH20 and KH16, right?
Yes,
Can we go to Calam 48?
Okay, exhibit Calam 48. And what page do you want to go to in this?
I believe it's 19. That's not right. I'm sorry, that's not. Calam, I don't think that's correct. Oh, no, it is. Calam 48. We're looking at yes, that second paragraph that starts with some of the parameters.
Okay, let's just make sure we're all on the same page, so to speak. What page are you on here?
I believe this is PDF page 19.
Okay. Exhibit Calam 48, PDF page 19. Go ahead.
Dr. Ye, just kind of read this paragraph a little bit to yourself. I'm going to focus kind of on the end where Weiss specifically discusses the KH values in KH20.
And I'm sorry, I'm still catching up. Which paragraph are you wanting him to look at, Mr. Bouchard?
The one right in the middle of the screen that says some of the parameters.
Okay, that's the second paragraph. Go ahead. And Dr. Ye, why don't you read that to yourself, and then Mr. Bouchard will ask you a question.
okay.
Okay, Dr. Ye, let us know when you finished reading that paragraph.
Yes,
All right, go ahead, Mr. Bouchard, with your question.
Dr. Ye, Weiss criticizes the hydraulic values in layer 2, specifically zone KH20, which hydrofocus had set at a value of 4, correct?
correct.
And he said that if it was adjusted, it should be adjusted higher in the direction of reasonableness, correct?
Correct.
In your model, you did not do that, correct? You adjusted that value lower.
So first of all, that KH20 and well, first of all, this is related to KH16. So when we update the model, actually that FO-SVA area was extended toward the west per Weiss suggestion. So right now, you cannot compare that K directly because the FO-SVA boundary extended to the west. So that should be a part of the KH16. So we did increase the K value for most of the KH16. You know, we try to increase that within a certain using a certain value, and also we can match the observed water level in that area. So you can see our calibration is pretty good for NW5, G6 in that area. But that KH16 actually include dune sand and also A aquifer. The K value for A aquifer certainly will be lower.
So if we could go back to Caliam 89, and I only have 2 or 3 more questions, and back to PDF page 48. It's the figure of conductivities we were looking at.
Okay, this is, you just scroll down, Ms. Mullen, so I know. This is figure 9. And what PDF page did you say we're on, Mr. Bouchard? I'm sorry, I'm not quite keeping up with that.
48.
Okay, so we have exhibit Caliam 89, PDF page 48, and it's figure 9. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to just zoom in a little on layer 2 that we've been talking about.
Okay, so layer 2 is the top center.
So there's 2 number 2s, and it appears to kind of flow from the bottom kind of up a little bit in the figure. Did you see where I'm looking at, Mr. Gary? Are we looking at the same part?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and on the right to that, there's a 25 now, which you said was zone 16 before. You increased the horizontal conductivity in that zone, correct?
Correct.
And on the left, there's a conductivity zone of 20, correct?
Correct.
The zone of 2 in the middle would greatly reduce the ability of those zones to flow across that 2, correct?
Correct.
It would effectively create like a dam.
No.
No. Can you or anyone else on the panel show me in the figures 4 through 8 above this where the bore logs support putting the conductivity value of 2 in this area?
Yeah, that number is, the 2 number is really for the model calibration you can see the water level in that 20 feet per day zone, and then 25 feet per day zone. The head differences is quite different. So if you increase that number, then you cannot match the water level in that 20 feet per day zone. So it's all model calibration. And also that 2 feet per day is the in the FOSVA area. We do see some very low hydraulic conductivity in that area.
That's not represented on the figures in this report, though, correct?
Which figure?
The figures 4 through 8, the ones above the one we're looking at.
Why don't you, if you need to, Dr. Ye, I don't know if you have a copy, or we can scroll through starting with figure 4 and on to figure 8. I mean, it's a very important question. So why don't we do that? Let's scroll up, Ms. Mullen. We'll start with figure 4. If you can maybe zoom out just a little so we can see the whole page for that.
Figure 4 through 8 are the geologic cross sections.
That's awfully fast.
Okay, so Dr. Ye, if I understand the question, Mr. Burchard, correct me if I'm wrong. The question is this basically area where you've put in a model parameter of hydraulic conductivity of 2 feet per day, is this what you say is necessary because the observed head differences? Is this shown, this area in the FOSVA, is this shown anywhere in figures 4 through 8? And if you need to take a moment to look at those, and I don't know if you can't access them, we can try to display them here, or if you can access them on your own computer, that's fine as well, because they are quite detailed figures. Yeah,
I don't know, but this is very general. If you see, like, for example, you see the middle, that yellow color, that's, you know, just put one color there. But how variation within there, we don't know. We only have like 3 wells, you know, penetrate that.
And Dr. Ye, these figures were not prepared by you, correct?
Correct.
And again, you didn't calculate the range of horizontal hydraulic conductivities used in your model, correct?
I was provided to a range, then use that range for my model calibration to minimize the residual.
So you can't show us any of the geologic data, or there anything in this report that supports that range of 2, correct?
Correct.
That's all I had on those issues, Mr. Lilly. I had a handful of other questions very quickly, just about the process and why the model was transitioned from geoscience to hydrofocus that I'd like to get into.
Okay. How long do you think those will take?
I don't think it should take more than 5 minutes.
Okay, why don't you take 5 minutes and then we'll plan to take our break. Go ahead.
Dr. Ye, when you did the 2015 North Marina groundwater model, Geoscience at that time was working as a subcontractor to the Public Utilities Commission on CalAm's application for this project, correct?
I know it's ESA. We sub-consultant to them for 2015 model.
You were a sub-consultant to ESA. ESA was a consultant for the Public Utilities Commission, correct?
I think so.
Okay, and then shortly after you did your 2015 model in April, Geoscience was removed as a subcontractor to the Public Utilities Commission, correct?
Correct.
And that had something to do with the fact that Dennis Williams had a conflict. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you know what that conflict was?
I don't know the details. I know we have a conflict. Then I needed to transfer all my model files to Hydro Focus.
So can we look at Marina Coast Exhibit 104, which I think we uploaded this morning?
Okay. And exhibit MCWB 104. And we'll just scroll down a little bit so we can read the first page. Actually, Ms. Mullen, just scroll up a little bit. I want to see the date of this. Okay, filed 7/09/15, and now, and the title is Administrative Law Judge's Ruling Extending Briefing Schedule. So what page do you want to go to, Mr. Bouchard?
I'd like to scroll down to the attachment, which is a notice to all parties, and PDF page 3.
Okay. Notice to all parties. All right, go ahead.
I'm just gonna, at the bottom of that page, second to last paragraph starts with first.
Okay.
Mr. Lee, I just object in general. What's irrelevant?
I'm going to overrule that objection. I'll go. Well, actually,
What is irrelevant?
Mr. Bouchard, what is the relevance? I'll ask that first before I rule on the objection.
Well, it goes to explain why the model was transferred to Hydro Focus in the first place. Also, Mr. Moore made a very large deal in his opening about conflicts and the actions CalAm has taken. I think it's important to understand why this project was delayed for a little bit and why the model had to be transferred to Hydro Focus. I think it's also
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection and allow you to ask 1 or 2 questions on this. The relevance is marginal at best, but I've been fairly loose on this so far. So go ahead. But pretty quick, please.
I was just going to read the final 2 paragraphs and then ask 1 question.
Go ahead.
It says, first, we've learned that one of our subcontractors, an entity called Geosciences, also has a contractual relationship with CalAm, the MPWSP's proponent, and that Geosciences contract with CalAm pertains to the MPWSP, and that the president of Geosciences holds 1 or more patents related to slant well technology that CalAm might or could use in the construction of the MPWSP. The commission takes this situation very seriously. As a result of the concerns raised by these issues, after transitioning their work product to ESA, Geoscience will not do any more work for the commission on this project.
Okay, so what is your question of Dr. Ye?
Dr. Ye, the president of Geoscience that they're referencing here, is that Dennis Williams?
Yes.
Dennis Williams is a member of the HWG. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Lee, I would move to strike based on that. The conflict to which Mr. Moore referred concerned the crime perpetrated by Marina Coast and hiring Dennis or Mr. Collins that delayed it. This has nothing to do with the 8 questions, the validity of his report, or anything related to this proceeding. Whereas the conflict we refer to directly related to the motive and reason why Marina Coast is taking the actions in this case. So I move this.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think the background of the development of the 2015 model, the 2016 model, and the 2022 model, and who did what is relevant. And of course, the 2022 model is very relevant to the court's issues. And so I think this is relevant background. So the objection is overruled. What is your question, Mr. Brochard? You asked him if Dennis Williams was the president, and he said yes. And Dennis Williams also is a member of the hydrologic working group. So do you have any further questions about this?
Dr. Ye, you report to Dennis Williams for this project still, is that correct?
For the 2022 model, I reported to him. It's not because he's the president, he's the member of HWG. So every time I report to him, it's at the HWG meeting. I didn't talk to him anything, other than at those meetings.
I don't have any more questions, Mr. Lilly.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Brochard, and thank you, Dr. Ye. We are going to move on to City of Marina's cross-examination after we take our afternoon break. I'm just going to check my notes here. And I did want to say one thing before I forget, just because I may forget. Because the City of Marina attorneys have one sound feed, our display just says City of Marina when either Mr. Spalding or Ms. Meisenheimer speaks. I don't think this is a big problem. We certainly can tell the difference between your two voices, but it might be good at the very beginning, if it's one of you and then it's the other of you, just to identify yourself. Again, the only time it's going to be confusing is if somebody looks at the Zoom-generated computer transcript, which we do provide, even though it's not super accurate because it's just computer-generated, not proofread. But I did want to let you know that. And then with that, I do want to check time estimates. Let me see what my notes say about this.
Before you move past that comment, I think Mr. Spalding and Ms. Meisenheimer are in separate tiles. I suspect because the camera's off, the City of Marina is some witness from the City of Marina who I appreciate knowing who it was.
They told us yesterday they had one sound feed because they were getting feedback between their different computers.
Right? So that's not a separate person.
Is that go ahead, Mr. Spalding, what's the story with the City of Marina tile here?
I'll ask Larissa to address it.
We'll let Ms. Meisenheimer, what's the story with the tile here?
Story here is in anticipation of this grand event, we have set up a command center room where we are all in one room. And as you all know, with Zoom, it gets very complicated with the feedback and audio. And so rather than try to have me and Skip just coordinate our ons and offs on the mute button, we have one feed. And so the feed is the microphone that is sitting between Skip and I.
Okay. That's what I thought. So anyway, just so we know, and that's fine. I certainly appreciate your taking measures to avoid feedback. We want that. So that's not going to be a problem. My notes indicate, I believe, Ms. Meisenheimer, you estimated approximately 1 hour for cross-examination of Mr. Durbin and Dr. Ye, and Mr. Spalding, you estimated approximately 1 hour for cross-examination of Mr. Loeffler. Are those both still correct?
Those are both still correct. We'll do our best to bring this home today.
Okay, well, I'd certainly like to wrap up. I mean, I can go on, but there are people who have commitments starting at 5 o'clock. So we try to wrap up by then. So let's take a break It's 2:48. We'll take a break till 3 o'clock. And Ms. Meisenheimer, you were going to go first, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so,
With which witness? I'm sorry, with which witness? Just so we have him or. him
and
or-
I was just going to say, just so my staff can get ready on that too, it'll be Mr. Durbin and Dr. Ye. So we'll try to have their their written testimony ready to go. And that is good because it's going to be pretty late for Mr. Durbin. I think he's 7 or 8 hours later than us, so we can maybe wrap him up first. That would be good. So that's the plan. Again, don't log off, but you can temporarily turn off your microphone and camera. Let's all come back at 3 o'clock.
Hey, Rob, your video is on.
Rob, are you there?
Yeah, hi, Jim.
How have you been? I see you a lot, but I don't get to talk to you.
Likewise. Are you guys in Las Posas?
No,
Um,
it's theoretically, but we represent the city of Moore Park. And we haven't done anything active since our water supplier's Waterworks. So they're carrying the ball and we sort of got out. So we haven't been in that mess, in that phase trial. King of-
Tentative just came out today, I think, right?
yes.
The tentative came out today.
Are you in it, Rob?
Yeah.
Who do you have?
You look like you're not happy about the tentative, Rob.
Well, the tentative was predicted months ago. I represent a theoretically dormant mutual that had historically exercised its groundwater rights.
Well, Melvin Myers taught everybody what manpower means in that case. I've never seen anyone man a case like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I hope they have a deep pocketed group of clients because they have not turned over, left unturned any stones.
Unbelievable, huh? With two different motions to disqualify counsel in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Oh, just all kinds of nasty back and forth.
Well, I'm glad I tried to stay out of it and I was successful until we kind of got into one of those conflict traps last year and ended up having to.
I saw that. Well, good. At least you. Now, phase 3, they'll be arguing about the physical solution. Who has the power to determine safe yield? And
yeah,
it's a mess. Mr. Lilly, I know we're not officially on the record, but if that's okay, I just wanted to let you know I have to catch a plane, and so I will just disappear my tile. And I didn't want to be rude or anyone think it was in reaction to something.
Okay, well, why don't you wait until we go back on the record? You can say that just so we all know.
Oh, that's fine.
We're about ready to go back on the record. We just need a couple of people to come back and join us.
And of course, you can say my competent colleagues will carry on without me or whatever the normal compliment is.
Okay, I think we're back on the record. There's Mr. Spalding. Good. So, Mr. Osias, you said what time are you going to be leaving today?
I'm going to be leaving this proceeding at 4:20.
Okay, and we'll probably still be going, but obviously CalAm does have other qualified attorneys who will continue to participate. So thank you for letting us know. All right, with that, Ms. Meisenheimer, you may start your cross-examination questions. And just a reminder to Mr. Durbin, you're still under oath. And of course, Dr. Ye, you're still under oath. So Ms. Meisenheimer, please proceed.
Mr. Lilly, I do have a threshold issue. As everyone knows, Mr. Durbin is testifying from abroad. He had plans yesterday, today, and significant plans for tomorrow. I was hoping that we could finish his cross and or the board's questions today. Out of respect to him and his calendar and what he's been through, I wanted to ask that on his behalf.
I'll see. I'm sorry. I certainly don't want to create any inconveniences. And we'll see why don't you bring that up again, Mr. Betts, when we wrap up City of Marina, and we'll see. I do have some questions for Mr. Durbin, not very many. And I'd like to accommodate him if I can. On the other hand, I do want to organize my questions well, and I'm not sure where we're going to be when 5 o'clock rolls around. So we'll bring that up and do the best we can. All right, with that, Ms. Meisenheimer, please proceed with your cross-examination.
Thank you. Mr. Durbin, my name is Larissa Meisenheimer. We met last week at your deposition, as you'll probably remember.
I do remember.
I know it is late in the day for you, so we'll try to get through this fairly quickly. If you could show Caliam 70 to start.
Okay, we'll post exhibit Caliam 70.
Thank you. And if we could go to, well, let's orient the witness first and show him what it is. Mr. Durbin, do you recognize that this is your written testimony submitted in this matter?
I do.
If we could go to page 3, lines 16 through 17.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting my paper. So we're on exhibit Caliam 70, page 3. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm reading from lines 16 and 17, Mr. Durbin. It says the HWG was created as a result of a settlement agreement among several of the major parties concerned with the possible impacts of the MPWSP. And then it goes on. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
That settlement did not include Marina or MCWD, correct?
Are you asking were they parties to it?
I am.
Is that the question? Yeah, I have no idea.
To the best of your knowledge, there's never been a representative of the city of Marina or MCWD on HWG, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, you were an HWG representative on behalf of Inland Agricultural Groundwater Basin Interests, isn't that right?
Yes, for the Spanish Valley Water Coalition.
And that was starting in 2013, correct?
Could have been 2012. Yes, I think it was 2012.
And Mr. Durbin, I promise I'm not trying to be tricky. If you look at that second sentence, it says the HWG started work in 2013. Do you see that?
Yes, but I was doing work for the coalition prior to that.
I'd like to focus on your work for HWG, if that's all right. So even during the time when you were representing the inland agricultural groups, Caliam was actually paying your bills. Isn't that right?
That's my understanding.
And do you know whether every member of HWG was paid by Caliam?
I do not.
Well, taking a step back then, HWG had 2 Caliam members, correct?
Yes.
And then there was you, and you've already confirmed that you were paid by Caliam, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Meisenheimer, you might be able to go on. Lines 20 through 22 clearly state that participation by Durbin and Feeney was funded by Caliam.
You beat me to the punch. I was going to get there.
Well, I thought you just asked him that same question, so go ahead.
So Mr. Durbin, this is your testimony here, correct?
Yes.
And do you see where it says Mr. Feeney and I were HWG representatives? And then you can sort of skim through the rest of it. But it said, had the cost of our participation on the HWG funded by California American Water Company?
I see that, yes.
So were all the members of HWG funded by Caliam?
At the time I wrote this, I must have believed that.
And when you wrote this, that was just a month ago, 2 months ago, isn't that right?
Correct, yes.
If we could move still on Caliam 70 to page 4, lines 10 through 12.
Okay, we're on page 4 line, and we'll go to line 10. Line 10. Go ahead.
And I'm going to focus you on the sentence that starts on line 11, it says the purpose of the SVSM is to generate initial conditions, boundary conditions, and internal sources and sinks for the NMGWM. Do you see that?
I do.
And that's consistent with the work that you performed here related to the 2022 NMGWM, correct?
Yes,
And so your job was to provide that information to Dr. Ye, right?
correct.
And then Dr. Ye incorporated that information into the 2022 NMGWM, right?
Yes,
And you were not personally involved in Dr. Ye's work incorporating those inputs into his model, correct?
I was not.
So for example, you don't know how Dr. Ye added recharge into the 2022 model, correct?
I do not.
And you haven't personally analyzed whether the 2022 NMGWM matches the data from test well pumping, correct?
I have not.
Turning back to the boundary heads you provided to Dr. Ye, errors in boundary heads have the potential to impact gradients, correct?
As a hypothetical, yes.
And why is that?
Well, there's a couple of parts to it. One is that the water levels on specified for the boundaries can have impacts in the interior of the model, but those impacts tend to diminish as you get further away from the boundary.
Well, to take it a more simple step, one measures a gradient by dividing the change in water level by the distance between 2 points, correct?
Correct, yes.
And if the water level at one of those two endpoints is incorrect, that impacts the gradient, right?
Again, we're talking about a hypothetical, yes. Mhm.
You haven't analyzed the actual observed gradients in the 2022 NMGWM area, correct?
I have not.
And at least as of the time of your deposition, you were not aware of there ever having been seaward gradients observed in the dune sand aquifer, correct?
Correct.
Back to Calam 70, if we could go to page 4, lines 12 through 14.
Okay, I think we're on page 4. We'll go to lines 12 through 14.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So this is starting with the line that is at the end of 12. It says those quantities were passed to geoscience as a calibration period adopted for the NMGWM and for the future period corresponding to hypotheticals, scenarios analyzed by the NMGWM. Do you see that?
I do, yes. Mhm.
Okay, I'd like to talk to you about that output that you provided to Dr. Ye. In reaching the final version of the SVSM that led to the outputs that you gave Dr. Ye, you developed a number of other interim versions, correct?
Yes.
At your deposition, you could not recall how those different versions were different from each other.
That's because those different versions, the answer is yes. This morning, I think I was asked about edited versions of my direct testimony, and I asked whether just day-to-day modifications of a document was different versions. If you take that, go back to the model, and I think I mentioned in my deposition there were 20 different versions or something like that. And I think their characterization is just as they described for the document a little earlier today.
And just to make sure I understand, so there were multiple versions and you can't recall, as you sit here today, what the differences between the versions were, correct?
I can't in the same way that if I'm writing a document and I change a paragraph, I can't remember sometime after what was originally in the paragraph.
And so, for example, you couldn't recall whether some scenarios used more recharge than others, right?
So, well, first of all, we're talking about the calibration or the scenarios.
And I'm trying to use the right technical terminology here, but I believe it's the scenarios that we were talking about. We can pull up the deposition transcript if that would be helpful. Why don't I try asking you the question one more time, and let's see if we can more efficiently go through it.
Just split it up into two. Ask him about whether he used different recharges in the calibration process, and then whether he used different recharge values in the scenario process.
Sure, let's do it that way. Did you use different recharge in the calibration process?
And again, you're asking about various versions of the model.
Sure.
Is that correct?
Yes, to be perfectly honest, I'm not quite sure how you're using version, scenario, and run. So what I'm trying to get at is that, and let me just back up a second. In sort of calibrating and working on your model, there were different iterations of it, whether they were called versions or scenarios, that created output that you could have provided to Dr. Yang. Isn't that right?
Let me help you. When I refer to scenarios, that is the simulations for the future 100-year period. The model calibration was for a historical period. So, and there's different work involved in those two elements of the modeling work.
If we could put up briefly Mr. Durbin's deposition, page 69. It's page 69 of the PDF.
Okay. We'll get that. Did he just have one volume?
We only had one volume.
Okay, so we have Durbin deposition transcript, page 69. And make it just one notch bigger, please. Oh, no, I can read that. That's fine. Go ahead, Ms. Meisner.
Dear. You know what? I'm realizing that my page numbering is not going to match up with yours because I was looking at a condensed version of this deposition. I need to go to page 272.
Yeah. The condensed version usually has the page numbers at the bottom right corners of each condensed page. Hopefully you can find it.
Well,
okay, 272. We are there.
Thank you. It looks like it will correspond because I do have the full transcript page as well. So if we look at 272, lines 6 through 8. It says, and so presumably you had two different versions of the SVSM that had different levels of recharge. Is that right? Answer. There were different versions. I think there's probably 20 different versions that evolved over time, and I can't recall how they differed. Is that testimony accurate, Mr. Durbin?
Yes, if you apply it to the historical period, and which was those versions represent the model development effort.
Sure. Did you provide any of those different versions to your counsel to be provided to us?
No, that could be done. I would caution there's, I think the file accumulation of files is in the gigabytes, but most of that is still available.
Okay. But you did, Mr. Durbin, provide some of those runs to Dr. Ye to test in his 2022 NMGWM model, correct?
They're towards the end of the work when we were particularly focusing on the FOSVA. contours that I was putting into the model were shared with Dr. Ye to make sure that I was doing things correctly with respect to the geometry of the FOSVA and the overlying aquifer. There may have been other communications, but I can't remember.
If we could go to deposition exhibit 22. And this is deposition rather than State Water Resources Control Board exhibit numbering.
Okay, so we'll go to Depot Exhibit 22, and we have been labeling these, so let's go ahead and label this. Let's see where we are.
If we could go
We're to City of Marina 33, excuse me, can this be City of Marina 34 then?
35, please.
Oh, what's 34?
That's an excellent question. We apparently marked it yesterday during.
Okay, we'll find it later. I don't know, it's not on our folder, so maybe after we're done today, you can send an email to us, of course, with CCs to everyone telling us what that is, but we will mark Depot Exhibit 22 as City of Marina Exhibit 35.
Absolutely. If we could go to the third page of this. And then if you can keep scrolling down, it's the email right there. We can stop. Mr. Durbin, who is Claire Elias?
My assistant, technical assistant.
And who is Leo Liu?
Employee of geosciences.
He works with Dr. Ye, correct?
That's my understanding.
So this is an email dated Friday, June 17, 2022. It's from Leo Liu to Claire Valias, copying you and others with the subject Ray calibration runs. It says, "Hi, Claire." This is from Leo, or Mr. Liu, Dr. Ye's colleague. "Hi, Claire. Per our discussion today, we have convergence and dry cell issues using the regional model results dated June 14. This is probably due to the reduced recharge in the shallow layer. Therefore, we prefer to use the regional model results dated June 8, which have higher recharge in the shallow layer than the June 14 version. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
And that June 18 and June 14 versions were not produced to council here, correct?
Neither of those would have been produced because they're not the final models.
I'm sorry, just to make sure I have that clear. These were not produced, correct?
They were not.
And we can take this down. Your model also has some differences from the NMGWM that I'd like to touch base about. The first, the base elevations for your model are 300 to 400 feet higher than the 2022 NMGWM, isn't that right?
Yes.
And you don't remember how you calculated the base elevation for your model, correct?
I don't think that is not a correct statement. They come from my USGS report.
Let me try one more question to see if I can clarify, or we'll have to go to the depot transcript. I believe you testified let's start at the beginning. Your calculation was based on some USGS logs that have been long since lost. Isn't that right?
No, they're a division of oil and gas wildcat wells.
Okay, perhaps we can just go to the deposition. Could we put up Mr. Durbin's deposition, page 59?
Okay. Get that just a moment here
Thank you.
and make it a little bigger. Sorry if I'm going out of view, I have to tilt my computer to read the deposition transcript. Go ahead.
So Page 230. Oh, and I apologize. I gave you the condensed number again. It's page 230, which hopefully will line up.
Okay. Okay, we have 230.
Great. So starting with line 19, do I understand that you originally estimated the base elevation for your model using electric logs from the Division of Oil and Gas, correct? And you didn't remember how you calculated the base elevation, right? Answer, other than that there was can we scroll down?
Next.
An interpretation of the logs, of the electric logs. Question, but you do state, I don't recall how I estimated the base elevation from the logs, right? Answer, yeah. And what I'm referring to here is that in using the logs in this way, there's particular signal patterns that help identify breaks in formations, and I just don't remember how I did that. Question, and you said the logs were long lost at USGS, right? Answer, correct. Question, so at this point you couldn't replicate how you calculated the base elevation, right? Answer, no, I cannot. Does that accurately reflect your testimony, Mr. Durbin?
Yes, it does.
Where you put the base elevation can impact other parameters and factors in the model, correct?
Yes,
You recommended that Dr. Ye use vertical extrapolation to bridge the gap between the models, right?
yes, I believe so.
But you don't know what Dr. Ye ultimately did, correct?
I do not.
And one other difference, the SVSM also uses different layers in its model than the NMGWM, correct?
That's correct.
If we could put up Callium 73.
Okay, exhibit Callium 73, which is Mr. Durbin's technical memorandum.
Thank you. Mr. Durbin, this is the technical memorandum development and use of a model for the Salinas Valley and Seaside Groundwater Basins, California, dated July 15, 2022, prepared by you, correct?
Yes,
So this was prepared within the last, say, 3 or 4 months?
well, it's dated July 15th, so how many months is that? I'm not sure.
We can all count that back. Go ahead, Ms. Meisenheimer.
I'm not going to test your math. Don't worry. If we could go to page 7 of the PDF. Thank you.
Okay, this is PDF page 7 is text page 1.
All right. And Mr. Durbin, you drafted this report, correct?
I did, yes.
Okay. I'm going to read the last sentence of the first paragraph. You wrote, the feedstock to the plant will be saline groundwater pumped from the slant wells beneath the beach and extending offshore beneath Monterey Bay. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Next, I'd like to move on to recharge. If we could go to exhibit 70.
Okay. Exhibit 70 is his testimony. Go ahead. Callium 70.
Page 4, lines 19 through 21.
All right, we have that on the screen.
Okay, I'm going to read from line 19 towards the end. Mr. Durbin, you write the recharge and pumping input into the SVSM for the durations of the calibration in future periods were provided for incorporation into the NMGWM as recharge and pumping. Do you see that?
Yes.
So using your SVSM model, you provided the inputs concerning recharge to Dr. Ye for his use in the 2022 NMGWM model, right?
I did.
And as you sit here today, do you know the average amount of recharge that the SVSM provided to Dr. Ye to incorporate into the model?
we had some discussions, you and I, during my depositions about that. And at that time, I didn't know the answer, but I have subsequently looked at some of those numbers.
And where did you go to look for those numbers?
To the model input files that I provided.
Okay. Do you remember in the deposition, you said you would need to go dig in your work files?
Yes, but the same information is in a number of places. Yes.
And so it sounds like you may actually have the answer today. What was the average amount of recharge that the SVSM provided to Dr. Ye to incorporate into the model?
Well, it varies from place to place with respect to land use and climate and vegetation cover, a variety of things. So the numbers that I provided to Dr. Ye vary spatially and temporally based on those factors.
You did not vary the recharge that you provided to Dr. Ye for the 2022 model to determine the sensitivity of any model parameters, correct?
So did I provide Dr. Ye various recharge rates for him to look at sensitivities? Is that the question?
Yeah, and I apologize if it's inartful, but that is the question.
Yes, I did not.
And so, for example, you didn't use different levels of recharge to test the sensitivity of ocean water percentage to changes in recharge, correct?
No, I never addressed that issue at all.
Turning to the FOSVA, are you okay if I refer to the Fort Ord Salinas Valley Aquitard as the FOSVA?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know whether the 2022 NMGWM changes the boundaries of the Fort Ord Salinas Valley Aquitard?
Could you say that again? I'm not sure I understood it.
Sure. Do you know if the 2022 NMGWN changed the boundaries of the FOSVA?
Changed from what?
From the prior model, either the 2015 or the 2016 version?
Well, I gave Dr. Ye my values, and they may be different than these other models, but I don't know exactly what he did with them.
Sure. And let me ask it more simply, because I think I can get at that more quickly. You didn't personally do any of the work to calculate the shape and size of the FOSVA, right?
I did not.
Turning to WICE, do you know whether the 2022 NMGWM was in part designed to respond to the 2020 independent report by Weiss and Associates?
I believe it was.
Excuse me, Ms. Meisenheimer, I know you're trying to be efficient here, but can you explain to me why you're asking Mr. Durbin all these questions about the 2022 NMGWM when clearly Dr. Ye will know a lot more about this?
The reason I am asking him, Mr. Durbin's inputs were clearly very essential to the inputs into the model. And I'm trying to test the limits of where Mr. Durbin was involved and where he isn't. And I do think we've established to a great extent where he was not involved. I have one more question to make sure there was something else he was not involved in, and then I am done.
Okay, yeah, that seems pretty clear. He was not very involved in the 2022 NMGWM. But go ahead with your last question on this topic.
Thank you. And at your deposition, you didn't recall having seen the 2020 Weiss report, correct?
Or I didn't recall. Yes, I did not recall.
And you personally have not evaluated the criticisms that Weiss made of the NMGWM models, including how boundary condition inputs were done.
I have not.
I have nothing further at this time.
Okay, so do you want to move over to Dr. Ye?
Yes, let's do that. You could bear with me while I shuffle a few papers.
Okay.
Are we ready to go?
Yes,
Great. Okay. Dr. Ye, good afternoon. I think you'll remember me as well from your deposition. I'm Larissa Meisenheimer. I represent the city of Marina. And with
Yes.
that, let's dive in. Could we put up CalAm 89?
Okay. Let's display exhibit CalAm 89. This is Dr. Ye's technical memorandum. Go ahead.
If we could go to page 75 of the PDF.
We will get there momentarily. And this, Ms. Mullen, just scroll down so I've got the figure number and can state it for the record. A couple more notches. Figure 36. Go ahead.
Thank you. This figure is intended to project the simulated change in groundwater elevations after 10 years of the project, comparing two scenarios, correct?
correct.
What is scenario 3?
Scenario 3 is existing pumping with the project pumping of a 15.5 MGD.
It looks like in the table in your report, it says 2019 ag pumping. So does it assume that the 2019 agricultural pumping continues forward at its current rate?
Correct. Into the future of 100 years.
Okay. And then scenario 3 is also with the project. What is scenario 1?
Scenario 1 is the same as scenario 3, except for no project pumping.
So this essentially compares the impact of the project versus no project, assuming 2019 agricultural pumping, right?
Correct.
Could you look at layer 2? Now the negative 12, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, and negative 1, what do those represent?
Yeah, because it's a scenario 3 water level minus scenario 1 water level. So negative number.
Okay, Dr. Ye, you broke up for a minute, so just start over with your answer.
Okay, because that is a scenario 3 water level minus scenario 1 water level. So a negative value represents a lowering of water level due to the project pumping.
Now, the negative 1 line in the figure depicts the area up to which the model predicts there will be at least 1 foot of drawdown caused by the project, correct?
Correct.
The model simulation also predicted a drawdown outside that line, albeit less than 1 foot, right?
Right.
And outside that line, the model simulation you ran actually provided a line that would be the half-foot reduction line, right?
Can you repeat your question?
Sure. The model simulation you ran provided a line that would be a half-foot reduction line, didn't it?
Right.
And that half-foot reduction is not shown on this figure, is it?
Correct. Because less than 1 foot of lowering water level, we consider that it's an insignificant change in water level.
So you didn't put that half-foot line on any of these charts, right?
Correct.
The model simulation also gave you a line where the change was 0, or in other words, where the drawdown impact stopped. Correct?
I'm not sure if we can get a 0 line.
Do you think from your model you could determine where the drawdown stopped such that there was no more drawdown?
I think the model that's within the model noise.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? You think that's model noise?
Yes.
So do you think you could accurately predict the point at which the drawdown would stop and there would be no impact from the pumping?
That's a really insignificant level asked for the model to predict.
Now, these charts show the predicted difference in heads between pumping versus no pumping, right?
Correct.
And we're seeing differences of -4, -3, -2, -1, right?
Correct.
Isn't there in layer 2 a standard deviation of 9 feet between the predicted heads and the actual heads in that area?
I think I answered that question earlier. That standard deviation is the standard deviation residual for that entire model calibration period and for that particular layer. But the standard deviation at the well site and recent year are totally different.
And to make sure I understand, let's go out sort of by the -1 line. The model measures various wellheads in that area to try to accurately predict what the wellhead will be using the NMGWN and match it to an observed wellhead, right?
For the calibration, yes.
And for layer 2, the standard deviation was 9. Isn't that right?
That's for the time period, for the historical time period from 2000 to 2019. And for that entire model period, if you're talking about that blue contours area, you look at the residual for NW1, NW3, NW4, and NW7, that standard deviation of residuals are much lower
And why would that be?
Because that's just the model calibration and the residual distribution vary in each area.
But- Okay, but you
so-
do acknowledge.
Wait. Let him finish, please.
Sure.
Go ahead, Dr. Ye.
So for this model, we update the data collected during the Stanwell pumping test from 2015, then up to 2019. So we have very good data, and we were able to have very good calibration in that particular area. So that's why the standard deviation of the residual is much lower than when you look at the entire model domain.
And when you say it's much better, do you mean right at the test well site?
Yes, like those monitoring wells, constructed by KLM.
And how about if you were to extend it out to say where that -1 line is? Do you know what the standard deviations of the measured heads are out that far?
I don't have that information, but for the entire model domain, it's about 9 feet.
And what you're showing here is a difference of 1 feet between the prediction, right?
Right.
If we could go to Caliam 88.
Okay, we'll post LM 88.
Thank you. If we could go to page 4, paragraph 16. And this is your rebuttal testimony, Dr. Ye. Okay. Looking at line 16, you say drawdowns caused by project pumping are restricted to a maximum distance inland on approximately 11,100 to 11,300 feet from the well field and the lower portion of the DSA, and the 180-foot, 18 FTE aquifer, correct? Do you see that?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And in fact, the 2022 NMGWM shows that drawdown of less than a foot will occur farther than 11,300 feet, correct?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. In fact, the 2022 NMGWM shows that drawdown of less than 1 foot will occur farther than 11,000, 3,000 feet, correct?
No, that's 11,300 feet. Yeah, from the well field.
And that's where, and let me see if I can frame it differently. I don't mean to confuse you. You indicate that drawdown of 1 feet is out to the 11,100 to 11,300 foot area, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And all I'm saying is that there will be some drawdown outside of that, but less than a foot, correct?
Correct.
Give me one moment. I have nothing further at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we will proceed with Mr. Spalding's cross-examination of Mr. Leffler. And this is obvious, but I'll say it anyway. Just a reminder, you're still under oath. Mr. Spalding, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Lilly. Mr. Leffler, I would like to discuss with you ocean water percentage. And right at the start, I'd like to ask you, what is ocean water percentage?
So that's a term that was introduced in the return water settlement agreement. And there's a formula in that document that provides a way to calculate the ocean water percentage.
And is it fair to say that ocean water percentage is a calculation of the amount or percentage of ocean water compared to fresh water?
No, I think it's a calculation that's designed to calculate what is the relative percentage of ocean water within an overall single body of water that's highly saline. There's really only one water here. It's a highly saline body of water that these slant wells will tap into. You know, it has TDS of, you know, whatever it might be, you know, 30,000 milligrams per liter TDS. And it's just, my understanding is that formula is really just simply a mechanism or a means that some parties reached agreement as it provide a basis for what would be the water that's provided to Castroville from this project.
All right, I would like to introduce CalAm Exhibit 42, please.
Okay, we will get exhibit CalAm 42.
All right.
We have that up on the screen. First of all, Mr. Leffler, are you familiar with this document?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so go ahead, Mr. Spalding.
Thank you. What is this document an appendix to? It is called Appendix H.
I believe it could be an appendix to the HWG technical report, but I'm not 100% certain.
All right, is it fair to say that it sets forth the methodology and calculations for prediction of OWP in relation to the slant wells?
This is one of the tools that was developed to evaluate ocean water percentage.
All right, and let's go to the next page, please.
Okay, PDF page 2, which is first page of the letter dated September 15, 2017.
All right, and if we could scroll down just a little bit more. Now, you had mentioned, Mr. Leffler, that there was a formula or an equation for the calculation of freshwater percentage. Is that the calculation here?
No, this is a formula for the calculation of the ocean water percentage.
All right, thank you. Now, what was assumed as a freshwater TDS percentage in calculating the ocean water percentage?
There's no assumed freshwater percentage.
All right, thank you. Let me ask a better
Wait.
question.
I want to make sure I'm clear on this. Mr. Leffler, right down there, it says 500 equals assumed freshwater TDS. And maybe there's difference between percentage and TDS, but could you please clarify? I'm confused as to what the 500 means when you said there was no assumed ocean water, no freshwater percentage.
Yeah, that's right. It's exactly right. It's not a percentage, it's a TDS value.
Okay,
So-
you may proceed, Mr. Spalding.
Thank you. So in calculating the ocean water percentage, is it fair to say that the benchmark used was 500 milligrams per liter of TDS?
Well, I guess I'm not sure what you mean by benchmark here. I mean, this is, a value that's, it's part of this formula.
So you don't understand what the 500 TDS number represents here?
I think my understanding of this formula when it was developed is that that was intended to be the background TDS value.
What does it mean to be an assumed TDS?
Well, that's the value that was, assumed in this formula to be representative of the background level of the TDS is, to the best of my recollection.
All right, why don't we move on? I would like to go to Callium Exhibit 8, please. That's Appendix C to the direct testimony.
Okay, we will get that. Find it.
And if we could go to page 9, PDF page 9.
Okay. We have that on the screen.
Actually, we need to go 2 more pages to section 2.5.3. Perfect.
Okay, this is text page 7. I think well, I'm not sure what the PDF page is, probably PDF page 10, I think. Go ahead. What section do you want to look at, Mr. Spalding?
2.5.3. It's right in the middle of the screen.
Okay,
Now,
go ahead.
thank you. Is it fair to say, Mr. Loeffler, that you have accused in this paragraph the MCWD consultants of, quote, using misleading terminology and, quote, using a fresh narrative, a false narrative surrounding the presence of fresh water in the area. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know about the word accused, but I'm stating that there's some misleading terminology that surrounding what is fresh water, and that, that, as I recall, that was used by Weiss Associates when they were talking about fresh water. And I believe it was their 2020 report.
All right, let's go just above where we are to section 2.5.2. And in that paragraph, do you criticize the MCWD consultants because they have used, quote, water for beneficial use and, quote, source of drinking water to determine what is fresh water?
Yeah, I think that's, there's been, documents written and, implying that, or saying that those are drinking water or fresh water.
And from your point of view, anything above 500 milligrams per liter does not qualify as fresh water?
No, I believe I've defined that in my testimony. I guess I'm probably in an appendix. It might be in my, actually the main testimony, but I use 1,000 milligrams per liter because there's 2 MCLs for TDS, total dissolved solids. 500 is the recommended MCL, that's maximum contaminant level, and 1,000 is the maximum. And
Right.
I think I cite some other documents related to that as well, like USGS studies.
All right, in this connection, I'd like to introduce deposition exhibit 29. Which
Okay. we'll get
actually, I
depo-
think it may have been marked as Marina exhibit
I think we need to mark it.
36. Oh, sorry. We'd like to mark it, Mr. Lilly, as Marina exhibit 36.
Okay, we will do that. This will be designated as exhibit Marina 36. And we will pull it up from deposition exhibit 29. We've got it now.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Mr. Loeffler, this is the State Water Board's resolution from 1998 entitled Adoption of Policy entitled Sources of Drinking Water. And if you look down, if we can scroll down to the 5th whereas clause.
I think you misspoke, Mr. Spalding. It looks to me like it's 1988 here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did mean 1988. Thank you.
Go ahead.
In any case, in paragraph 5 of the whereas clauses, it says, quote, sources of drinking water shall be defined in the water quality control plans as those water bodies with beneficial uses designated as suitable or potentially suitable for municipal or domestic water supply with the capital letters MUN for the MUN use. And if you could keep scrolling down, please. It states that all surface and groundwaters of the state are considered to be suitable or potentially suitable for municipal or domestic water supply and should be so designated except paragraph 1, surface and groundwaters where the total dissolved solids, TDS, exceed 3,000 milligrams per liter, and it is not reasonably expected by regional boards to supply a water system. Now, are you familiar with this policy?
Yes.
And do you agree that the state board has determined that there is a 3,000 milligram per liter standard of TDS that is utilized for determining water that is suitable or potentially suitable for the MUN use?
So this document, I thought we were kind of talking more about fresh water. This document doesn't refer to fresh water. And it also uses the word potentially suitable. And so, potentially suitable, potentially with desalination, could be suitable. But, this isn't, I don't think this is the same thing as we were talking about in terms of, fresh water that would serve as a drinking water supply, without desalination. There's maximum contaminant levels of 500 milligrams per liter recommended and 1,000 maximum.
So is it your testimony then that anyone using this 3,000 milligram per liter standard as an actual or potential source of drinking water is using a false narrative?
And Mr. Spalding, I'm going to object to that. Using is unclear. I mean, this is clearly a guidance for use in water quality control plans, but your question is not limited to water quality control plans. So I think it's misleading, and you should either say using in water quality control plans or somehow otherwise explain how you think this standard for water quality control plans can be used in other circumstances and what those other circumstances are.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is it your understanding, Mr. Loeffler, that the 3,000 milligram per liter standard for groundwater is in the basin plan that covers the area where the project will be built?
I would presume that it is. I would also add that, you know, if, I think we talked about this earlier today, but when you're talking about 3,000 milligram per liter TDS, you know, that is generally has on the order of 1,500 milligrams per liter chloride. So, you know, there's other issues here. I mean, I really think that, you know, if we want to talk about fresh water that can be utilized as a drinking water source for a municipal entity without desalination, you know, 1,000 milligrams per liter is the limit.
You are aware, are you not, that Weiss adopted the 3,000 milligrams per liter standard from this policy in his analyses, correct?
I don't know about adopted, but that's, I think, was my point, that they used the 3,000, you know, milligrams per liter in their analysis, which is, you know, I'm saying is incorrect. And, you know, it appeared to me that the reason they were using that was, you know, for the reasons that we've been talking about here, that this has been put forth over time for this project as some standard for fresh water, and it's clearly not.
If 3,000 milligrams per liter of TDS was substituted into the formula we looked at a few minutes ago, would that have the result in the ocean water percentage going down?
Yes, it would, but that 500 milligram per liter value is meant to be a background value that you wouldn't have with seawater intrusion. I think if I recall correctly, that value started out even lower, I think it was like 440 milligrams per liter, and I don't know exactly how that was determined. I wasn't part of that. But ultimately, I think it just got rounded to 500. But it's not appropriate for that term in that equation.
All right, why don't we move on? How do groundwater gradients affect the calculation of ocean water percentage?
Well, I think you might have to be a little more specific in terms of your question.
Sure, I'm happy to. Isn't it true that hydrofocus in the 2016 model used only inland gradients in both the dune sand aquifer and in the 180-foot aquifer?
That is correct to my recollection.
And you have mentioned that there have been other models run since that have used seaward gradients. So if hydrofocus had used a seaward gradient in either one or both of these aquifers, would it have resulted in a lower ocean water percentage?
Generally, yes.
And why is that?
Well, because if you have seaward gradients, then you have, you have water from inland flowing towards the ocean.
And there would be a greater quantity of it than if there were inland gradients, correct?
Yeah, there would be slightly more inland water extracted from the slant wells.
You believe, however, that inland hydraulic gradients have existed historically and currently exist in both of these aquifers, correct?
I'm going to object. I mean, he can ask a question. He's not asking questions. He's throwing his opinions at the witness. That's an inappropriate way to take an examination.
The objection is overruled. That's an appropriate leading question. Go ahead and answer as you can, Mr. Leffler.
Yeah, I believe with consideration of freshwater equivalent heads and other monitoring wells such as MW8S, that that is the case.
Isn't it true that in late 2015 and early 2016, Cal-Am installed a new group of monitoring wells called nested monitoring wells in conjunction with the upcoming test slant well operation, correct?
I believe, I think that's all documented in the HWG reports. To the best of my recollection, that field work was in 2014 and 15. I just, I don't recall installation of monitoring wells in 2016.
Isn't it true that after the test slant well began operation in 2016, the field observed horizontal gradients in the dune sand aquifer have been seaward rather than landward?
Again, I don't think with consideration of freshwater equivalent heads and utilizing all the monitoring wells such as MW8S, I don't believe that's the case.
You believe that between 2016 and 21, the gradients have been landward rather than seaward in the dune sand aquifer?
I think, if you look at there's variability seasonally and monthly. There may be small portions of time where there was an instantaneous seaward gradient, but I think clearly overall, it's landward gradients across the CMEX property if you look at it overall.
Even during the 2016 to 21 period?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now, isn't it true that the groundwater elevations in monitoring well 7 during this period were higher than the groundwater elevations at monitoring wells 3 and 5 nearer the ocean in the dune sand aquifer?
Well, monitoring well 5 is not near the ocean, but monitoring well 3, yes, I believe that was probably the case.
So monitoring well 7 had higher elevations than monitoring wells 3 and 5 during that time, correct?
I don't know about 5.
Well, I asked about, I see 3 and 4.
Oh.
Let me ask it again. Is it fair to say that during the test slant well operational period, the groundwater levels in MW7 were higher than in MW3 and MW4?
Yeah, I believe that's true, but there was also an inland gradient at the same time among MW1, 3, and 4 across the CMEX property.
Don't you agree that there was actually a seaward gradient during this period?
I think I've already answered that. Across the CMEX property, in consideration of equivalent freshwater heads and all the monitoring wells such as MW8S, there's a seaward gradient across the CMEX property.
All right, I'd like to ask that we introduce Mr. Leffler's day 1 deposition and go to page 58.
Okay, we will get that.
Over here. Miss right up.
Okay, I think we have page 58 of
Right.
exhibit of Mr. Leffler's first deposition date transcript. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to read the Q&A starting on line 8. Quote, so with that amendment, your testimony is that monitoring wells 1, 3, 4, and 8 demonstrate that there is a seaward gradient in the dune sand aquifer between 2016 and 2021. Is that correct? Answer, yes, and also with consideration of density and freshwater equivalent heads. Does that refresh your memory of whether a seaward gradient was determined at those wells?
I think that's a mistake in my understanding of the question, because I was clearly meaning as a landward gradient.
All right, let's move on. Isn't it true that Cal-Am operated a test slant well on the CEMEX site for a little less than 3 years between 2016 and 2018?
By operated, you mean it was pumping on a more or less continuous basis?
I do, thank you.
So to the best of my recollection, that test slant well started pumping in April of 2015. And it stopped pumping in February of 2018.
And it was a full-scale production well, correct?
Yes.
It ran at the rates at which the proposed slant wells for the site are planned to be run at, correct?
I think approximately, yeah. I believe it operated at around 2,000 GPM. I'm not sure exactly what the planned rates are for the proposed wells, but I think, similar.
I would like to introduce or actually have called up on the screen Cal-Am Exhibit 29.
Okay, Exhibit Cal-Am 29. I don't know if we've seen that one before. I think that's new. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Leffler, can you summarize what this chart represents?
Yes, I believe that is a summary by month of the test slant well operations, and taking the discharge water quality and doing the ocean water percentage calculation.
And if we scroll down to the bottom of this page, is it fair to say that over the almost 3-year operational period of the slant well, the average ocean water percentage was 90.5%?
Yes, that's what it says, with the caveat that this was a well above average rainfall period, and actually had one of the wettest years on record there in 2016-17. And also that there was, some operations with CEMEX in the pond area near the test slant well that was percolating water of lower than seawater TDS. I think, which is documented in the 2017 HWG technical report.
Well, isn't it true that even in the years that had less than normal rainfall, that the ocean water percentage was very low? You mentioned 2016 and 2017, but if we look at the months between April 2015 and December 2015, the ocean water percentage ranges from 76 to about 90%. Isn't that correct?
So, sorry, you're referring to starting at April 2015 to when?
To the end of the year, December 2015.
Okay, can we scroll up a little bit so we can see that time period? So the April 2015, of course, is when it started pumping. And I think one of the things that's important to remember is that, you know, the ocean water percentage when you first turn on a slant well or first turn on the project is going to start out at a lower value, but then it will rise over time with pumping until it reaches a more or less equilibrium value. And then from there, it will fluctuate to some degree with climatic conditions and seasonal conditions. But what happened here, so I think it's important to look, got to break this down a little bit because there was that no pumping period in there. So, from April, and I believe, I want to say it was maybe like April 22nd, it wasn't early in the month of April that it started up. And then through June, and I believe it was fairly early in the month, like June 4th or something, that this pumping stopped. So I think it was about a month and a half of continuous pumping, if you look at that time period there. And so you can see it rising rapidly. You start out at 76, you go to 82, then it's at 87. But then there was a no pumping period between that, I think it was early June date and relatively late October date, and then it started back up again, and it started out at 82, then it climbs to 88, and then 91 and 92. So and all the way up to 95 actually, and then we had another no pumping period. So you have to factor in that you have these no pumping periods into the analysis.
Isn't this the best field information we've got on how the full slant well project might operate and what its ocean water percentage would be?
Now, again, I think you really have to consider the caveats of an extremely high rainfall period in there, and again, the pond percolation issue that I mentioned, and again, the kind of these non-pumping periods need to be factored in.
Now, how does one convert ocean water percentage to acre feet a year to find the volume of water that is removed?
Well, the volume of water that's removed is just, you would use the pumping rate and the time of pumping to calculate the volume removed.
So if we use a 15.5 milligram, or excuse me, if we use a 15.5 million gallon per day level for an operating slant well project, and we assume that the non-ocean water percentage was 9.5%, isn't it true that the amount of non-ocean water extracted would be 1,650 acre feet per year?
So
I assume, Mr. Spalding, you meant 90.5. You said 9.5.
Well, I actually reversed it because the
okay.
9.5 is the ocean. So I'm concentrating on the freshwater or non-ocean water part of that.
Okay, that was not clear to me.
Well, I mean, I think again, you're talking about all of the water is, say, 30,000 TDS. And this ocean water percentage calculation is simply a formula that's in that return water settlement agreement to provide a basis for that the parties could agree to return an amount to Castroville. So I just think it's important to remember, it's just, there aren't separate buckets of water here. It's all one water of one quality.
All right, I'm glad you brought that up. I'd like to go to your bathtub analogy in your testimony. I'd like to bring up his rebuttal testimony, Exhibit 78, at page 14.
Okay, exhibit Cal-Am 78, page 14.
And if we could go further down the page, scroll down, please. If a little further, we're almost there. Thank you. All right, beginning on line 26, you talk about a bathtub and you say, quote, a suitable analogy might be filling a bathtub, i.e. aquifer, with 9 parts seawater, OWP 100%, and 1 part, if we could go to the next page, please.
Right. We'll go to the next page.
Thank you. Distilled water with an ocean water percent of 0 and mixing those waters together in the bathtub. The extraction of water from the bathtub yields ocean water percentage equal 90%. There is no fresh water available for extraction and use. Only highly saline water is able to be extracted from the bathtub. And it must undergo desalination to create fresh water. So after the 1 part fresh water and 9 parts of seawater are mixed together, what do you think the overall salinity level would be approximately?
Probably on the order of 30,000 TDS.
And that would be compared to ocean water of about 33,500 TDS.
Yes.
And is it fair to say that in your view, all of the water being sucked out of that bathtub would be unusable because it's almost like ocean water, correct?
Yes.
But in making that analogy, what about the 1 part to 10% of fresh water that you are putting in to dilute the seawater? Doesn't that, sorry, let me finish. Doesn't that result in a capture of that 1 part of seawater, excuse me, fresh water?
No, I think, you know, taking that example and applying it in the field here, I think there are, you know, a couple main components here. One is you have rainfall percolation, and a percentage of that, you know, falls on the beach, you know, and the dune sand, and a portion of that percolates down through the vadose zone, the unsaturated zone, to the water table, at which point it mixes with the underlying saline, brackish to saline water. And then, so that water immediately becomes brackish to saline before it's even possible to be extracted, because you can't extract it from the unsaturated zone. And then another piece of that would be, there's been, you know, of course, a lot of historic seawater intrusion in the area. And so you have TDS values, you know, that range from, you know, over 30,000 along the coast to, you know, depending on, you know, where you are inland, you know, maybe you're at, you know, 10,000 or 5,000. And so that water is already, you know, brackish to saline, but it's at a lower TDS than ocean water. So the water, so there's no fresh water. It's already been mixed with saline water and is a body of brackish to saline water on the inland portion.
But isn't it true, following your analogy, that in order to get that lower saline brackish water, there's a capture zone which is going to draw in fresh water, and that fresh water is being lost in the aquifer, correct?
Well, if there's inland gradients, I'm not sure what the fresh water is you're referring to exactly.
It's the flip side of the ocean water in the ocean water percentage calculation.
I think I just explained that, it's already mixed with saline water, and is a brackish to saline quality there on the inland side, because the rainfall is already mixed in there, and the historic seawater intrusion.
But didn't we see in the calculation for the test slant well operation that 9.5% was freshwater, or perhaps you'd call it non-ocean water?
Well, again, it's not, there's only one water that's extracted, and it's at a slightly lower TDS value than ocean water. And that's because you have rainfall percolation on the inland side that mixes with the brackish to saline water, and you have the historic seawater intrusion that has mixed in there as well. And so there's no separate fresh water there existing today without the slant wells.
All right, why don't we move on to a related but different topic? You will recall that the court asked the State Water Board to provide an opinion on a question which reads as follows: Can it be said with reasonable certainty that the Cal-Am wells will not exceed 500 acre-feet a year from any water source beneath the CEMEX property? Do you recall that question?
Yes.
And what is your answer to that question?
Well, I think it's described in my testimony, in my direct testimony. So we could read that, but to the best of my recollection, I indicated that that amount of water would decline over time to less than 500 acre-feet per year.
Why don't we look at your testimony? I'd like to go to Cal-Am 3, page 5, please.
Okay, we'll get up exhibit Cal-Am 3. Move to page 5.
Thank you. So in paragraph 15, it states in the answer to this question, quote, the total volume per year of seawater intrusion, brackish water extracted from beneath the CEMEX property will decrease over time to a long-term average of less than 500 acre-feet a year. Is that still your testimony now?
Well, I think we're looking at a summary, a very short summary of my testimony. I think that I describe this in more detail elsewhere in this document, but that's a brief summary.
And this summary is accurate. It's an accurate reflection of your opinion.
Yes, with the rest of what I've written about it.
And then at the beginning of the next sentence, you state no potable or usable quality water will be drawn from beneath the CEMEX property. And that's also still your opinion, correct?
Correct.
And that's based on your bathtub view of the ocean water percentage, that basically by the time the fresh water and the saline water mix together, that there is no usable water left, correct?
Well, I think I used the bathtub example just for a very specific purpose. But I mean, beneath the CMEX property, there is only, saline, brackish to saline water. Well, okay, not counting the deep aquifer, but there is only brackish to saline water.
Isn't it true that in making that calculation, you only included within it rainfall that fell on the CEMEX property itself, correct?
I think it would be helpful for me and probably Mr. Leffler if you refer to the part of Mr. Leffler's testimony where he has that rainfall calculation, Mr. Spalding. Can you give us the page number for that?
I think even better, Your Honor, is to go back to his deposition.
Well, I'd really rather use his testimony if we can, just because that's already in the record.
All right.
Unless you think you need to. I mean, I know it's in here. I just can't remember where.
Right. Why don't we go to paragraph 32 of your direct testimony? And we'll go to I'd like to go actually to page 32, not paragraph 32.
Okay, I think this is what I was remembering. So we're on page 32. Do you want to start with paragraph 87? Or 86?
86. I think I'd like to go down a few more lines. Yes, paragraph 87. If we could go down a little further and get all of that paragraph.
Okay, we've got almost all of it. That's all we can fit on the screen. We can scroll down when you get to the bottom.
All right, sounds good. The first sentence states, quote, the percentage of water extracted from the proposed slant wells that originates from beneath the CEMEX property, i.e. currently residing beneath the CEMEX property, will decrease over time, close quote. What is the distinction you're making there about water currently residing between the CEMEX property?
Well, I think I'm referring there to water that currently resides beneath the CMEX property and the dune sand and the 180-foot aquifers. Well, really, it would be, at the start of the project.
So would rainfall that falls east of the property migrates into the groundwater and then is captured and comes under the CEMEX property after operation be part of what you included in your analysis of water in answer to this question?
Well, I believe I have a calculation of that in my testimony, and I don't recall exactly where it is, if it's near this section. I believe I have a calculation for that.
Well, if I could refer to your deposition, there is some Q&A there that we could look at.
Well, let's first go here. It's just so much easier for me to follow this, Mr. Spalding, but then you can go to the deposition. But Mr. Leffler, I think you just read what you have starting at line 20 and see if this is what you're talking about here.
Okay, yeah, that discusses the rainfall amount.
Okay, and then keep reading.
Yeah, you can scroll down.
And we'll scroll down a few lines and let us know when you want to go to the next page.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a calculation that accounts for some rainfall off the CMEX property that then flows as groundwater towards it.
Okay, so this to me is fairly clear as to what you're saying. So Mr. Spalding, you can, now that I've seen this and he has read that, you may either ask him questions about this, or if you want to, you may go to his deposition transcript.
Well, why don't we go to one other place in his
Okay.
testimony, page 34, starting at line 15.
Okay.
Now, in the paragraph beginning, excuse me, the sentence beginning on line 15, it says, quote, after the first year or so of project initiation, virtually all of the water extracted by the proposed MPWSP wells, greater than 95%, will be from the ocean and from rainfall infiltration. And I want to ask, it looks like here you are including ocean water and rainfall infiltration together in the same bucket. Why wouldn't the rainfall infiltration be in the other bucket, the 5%?
Well, I think I was just trying to isolate the other amount that's not ocean water or rainfall. I was just trying to speak to that other amount.
Does that 5% include rainfall?
Well, it says the remaining amount of 5% will be from water historically accumulated within the capture zone beneath and outside the CMEX property.
Is that your answer?
I'm reading the rest of it. Yeah, I think that would include, whatever I didn't include in my rainfall calculation.
All right. I'm sorry, maybe I didn't understand that. You're saying that the rainfall is not included, correct?
I think the amount that I speak to from above, from the rainfall calculation above.
So are you only including rainfall that falls on the CEMEX property itself?
And Mr. Spalding, I'm confused. You have to say including in what? I'm just not following your question here.
Sorry, let me be clear. Are you saying that in the 5% amount, you are including some rainfall, or you're not including any rainfall?
I believe I'm including rainfall from the CMEX property there.
And are you including rainfall that falls outside of the CEMEX property?
Well, I think that's included in the remaining 5%.
All right, if we could turn Mr. Lilly to the deposition, I think page 76, there is a Q&A relevant here.
Okay, this is the first volume of the Leffler Depot.
Yes, please. Page
Volume
7,
1.
page 76.
All right. We've got it.
All right, if you look at line 22, the Q&A is, would rainfall that falls east of the property migrates into groundwater and then due to the gradient comes under the CEMEX property be part of what you included? We'll have to go to the next page. Answer no in your answer, which referred back to the previous question. Mr. Leffler, when you said that rainfall that falls east of the property migrates into groundwater and goes under the property is not included in your calculation of less than 500 acre-feet a year. What were you explaining?
Well, as I recall during the deposition, I wasn't allowed to look at my written testimony, and I think I had forgotten some things. So that would be my response.
All right, why don't we, I have just a couple of other quick matters and then we will be done. I'd like to turn from ocean water percentage to the calculation of the volume of water, fresh water that would be extracted. Isn't it true that an ocean water percentage of 97% would need to be attained by the slant wells in order to have less than 500 acre-feet a year of fresh water be captured?
Again, there is no fresh water that's being captured.
What then do you call, whatever you call the other percentage of the ocean water percentage? In other words, the ocean water percentage is comprised X amount of seawater and Y amount of another type of water. Weiss, Dr. Nelson, and Ms. Nelson and Dr. Trudell all call that the freshwater portion of the OWP. What do you call it?
I think, as we've talked about a lot today, it's already mixed. You know, the rainfall infiltration, the historic seawater intrusion into that area is already mixed together. And so there isn't, you know, some separate pool of fresh water to draw from.
Now, didn't Weiss conclude that the true amount of what he called fresh water, which was based on the 3000 TDS standard, that was extracted would range between 2,700 and 3,500 acre-feet a year?
Well, I don't recall specific numbers, and as I said, I don't think that 3,000 TDS is you know, an appropriate value to use for fresh water. And I think, as I've said repeatedly, again, there's no separate bucket of fresh water here. It's already a brackish to saline water that's being extracted.
All right, why don't we move on to my last topic. Isn't it correct that your direct testimony here was based on the results of the 2016 version by Hydrofocus of the North Marina groundwater model?
I believe my testimony takes into account all the work that's been done, and all the different methods and tools that have been developed, the field data, the analytical analysis, the different numerical models. I think I tried to take into account all the different work that's been done over the years.
But at the time of your direct testimony, you had not yet seen the results of the 2022 model being developed by Dr. Ye, correct?
Yes.
And you were able to take that into account in your rebuttal testimony. And is it your opinion that the results of the 2022 model informed your testimony on a range of topics, including groundwater gradients, the ocean water percentage, and a number of other issues involved in this proceeding, correct?
Yes, it was certainly one of the tools and models that was developed and supporting my testimony.
All right, the last exhibit I'd like to look at is the rebuttal appendix, Callium 79, please.
Okay. We'll get Callium 79 on the screen.
And if we could go to page 55, which is 63 of the PDF.
Okay, text page 55, PDF page 63. We have that right? I think we do. Begins with paragraph numbered 4 at the top. Go ahead.
If we could scroll down for a minute, please. Perfect. In the paragraph that begins an updated transient model was developed, is the model referred to the HWG 2022B model, the new model that was created by Dr. Ye?
Yes, that's the updated transient model.
And is it your testimony that that model, quote, provided similar results as previous modeling efforts with regard to slant wall pumping drawdown, capture mixing zones, OWP, extent of seawater intrusion, and an overall lack of impacts on the MCWD production wells, close quote?
That appears to be what it says.
So it's fair to say that the new modeling results to you provide important information underlying the testimony that you're giving here.
Yeah, again, it's one of the tools that we've developed over the years to apply to these different questions.
All right, thank you. I have no more questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spalding, and thank you, Mr. Leffler. So we have to figure out where we go from here before we close for the day. As I said before, my colleagues and I are developing our questions. I'm hoping I can cover them in an hour, but I'm not promising. Might take 2 at the most. And I don't know if I'll ask the Cal-Am attorneys, do you know if you're going to be having any redirect, obviously subject to potentially adding more redirect questions after you hear my questions? Does anybody want to
We
give
will,
a-
I think it's, well, we will decide after you've done with your questions. We won't ask the same questions, but I think we will have some redirect regardless.
Do you have any idea of a time estimate for that?
It's hard to tell, but 20, 30 minutes, maybe,
Okay,
maybe a little longer. I don't want to.
well, that's okay.
Sorry. Okay.
You can see why I didn't want to give up a hearing day. This is just the way things work. They always take longer than expected. So we have that issue. So we'll definitely go tomorrow. I'm going to have a start at 10 a.m. tomorrow, just so that I have time. I can do some tonight, but I want to have time to meet with my staff, technical staff, to refine our questions. So that's why I want to start at 10 a.m. on Friday with my questions, potentially also a few questions from them if they don't think I've asked it right, which is certainly possible. And then the redirect from the Cal-Am attorney or attorneys, and then we'll be done with the Cal-Am witnesses, and then we can take a break for the rest of the day and start again on Monday with the Marina Coast witnesses who will be testifying during this phase of the hearing. I would like all of you to work, each of you, you don't have to try to collaborate on this, but I would like each of you to prepare a list of the exhibits that you want to offer into evidence, including the excerpts of the deposition transcripts that you want to offer into evidence. So generally, I think it will be up to Cal-Am to offer the exhibits that have been labeled as Cal-Am exhibits. And then, of course, other parties may object. And similarly for Marina Coast, to offer the exhibits, which are all, I think are all deposition exhibits, although there may have been 1 or 2 others that have been labeled as Marina Coast exhibits, and then similarly for Marina with the Marina exhibits. And then also, whoever used a deposition transcript for cross-examination purposes, I would like you to designate the parts of of course, the name of the deposition, the deponent, and the date, particularly for those where the one deponent has 2 volumes, and the pages and line numbers that you want to have introduced into evidence. That's the way we talked about it before. And then, of course, we'll rule on that. So I would like you to prepare written lists of those. It'll just make it a lot easier for all of us, and email them to the AHO with, of course, CCs to the service list by 10 a.m. tomorrow. And then after I've done my questioning and the Cal-Am attorney or attorneys have done their redirect, we'll handle offers of exhibits into evidence and potential objections. So we can get through all of that and be ready to start with a clean slate on Monday with Marina Coast witnesses. So those are the main housekeeping matters. There is the question of whether we're going to ask Mr. Durbin to come back. And I just want to check. I'm trying to do an offline here. So if you can all bear with me, I know I tell you not to do this, but sometimes we have to do this. So for Mr. Wooldridge and Ms. Graziano, I've sent you an offline text. I don't know whether you tried to respond by email, but I'd like to take a minute on this to find out whether or not we need to call Mr. Durbin back tomorrow, whether he's off the hook. So can both of you let me know either by email or text, private just to me, whether you have questions for Mr. Durbin? And just, if you can all just hang on for a couple of minutes, we'll get this resolved. Okay. So unfortunately for Mr. Durbin, there's at least one of my technical experts does want to ask you questions. So sorry, Mr. Durbin. The good news is it'll be the morning our time, which won't be super late in the afternoon for you. So, and we'll try to start with you so you don't interrupt you as little as possible. So at roughly 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, we will ask you some questions, either I or my staff or both. And then assuming Cal-Am can do any redirect right then we can let you off the hook so you don't have to stay any longer. And I apologize for having to call you back for a third day, but that's, you can just see that's the way things are going here. And clearly your testimony is a critical part of this hearing, so we don't want to cut that short. So if you can do that, that will be fine. And then is there anything else we need to cover tonight before we sign off, or this afternoon, I should say? Okay, well, thank you. It's been a long day, but I do want to thank you all for your professional behavior and questioning. I think the questions were by and large efficient. And particularly thanks to our three witnesses from today, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Leffler, and Dr. Ye. I know this is hard work, but I think my impression is all of you worked very hard to listen to the questions and give the best answers you could. And I certainly appreciate that. So thank you very much for that. So with that, unless there's anything else for today, we'll sign off and we'll be back on the record tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. All right, goodbye.